made my girlfriend angry, and I couldn't be happier. Now, this might seem like I'm a jerk, and yes, this can be true to an extent, but in this case, it could be justified. Let me explain. One night in 2017, my then girlfriend was on her way to pick me up, and to kill some time, I decided to play an online FIFA match on my PS4. The game starts. A couple of minutes pass, and one of my players gets a red card. This was a poor start. But I continued to play, and with 10 men instead of the standard 11, the game stays tied 0-0. It was a nail-biter. My opponent and I were tactfully playing and seeing who would make the fatal mistake. I could feel my opponent's frustration because they couldn't score despite my handicap. A minute was left in the match, and a draw was the most likely result. But with the last possession and a couple of passes, I score. Game over. I was elated. I felt like a soccer genius winning with 10 men, and the fact that my opponent was angry at his side of the world made the victory even sweeter. Amidst my jubilation, I see text messages from my girlfriend. They were from 20 minutes ago, telling me she was outside waiting. I quickly hop into her car. She asked me why I was late, thinking I was doing something important. I told her the cold truth. I was playing FIFA. She was furious, but I didn't care. Knowing that I won with 10 men, I felt like I was on top of the world. Now, you're wondering what's the lesson of this story? Let me give you another cold truth. This story has nothing to teach. But the life of the great samurai Hideyoshi will teach you a few practical things for your life. If you don't know who Hideyoshi is, I'll forgive you. Heck, a few months ago, I didn't even know who he was until I saw him mentioned casually in a book I was reading. So, like a nerd, I look him up and go down a rabbit hole. And I found the book called The Life of Hideyoshi, written by Walter Denning from over a century ago. And I consumed that book. Long story short, Hideyoshi is the man to unify Japan after 200 years of civil strife. And he was no ordinary Japanese fellow. He was kicked out of school, joined a gang, and somehow worked for a warlord, only to rise the ranks and be the man to have all of Japan under his control. Reading about his life, I could see why he was successful. And the funny part is that many of the things that made him successful are simple things we can apply in our lives. And you know what? I'm going to tell you what they are. Not letting imperfections be an obstacle, spending time thinking, understanding human nature. With that long intro out of the way, let's get to the first part. Hideyoshi was not a handsome man. In fact, he was straight up ugly. Countless reports said he looked like a monkey. And to make matters worse, his first wife divorced him because of his ugliness. Yet, despite all this, Hideyoshi did not let this get in his way, no matter the insults. And you want to know why? Because he knew his own value. He knew what he was capable of, and he wouldn't let something like his looks be the reason why he wouldn't achieve his goals. This is a crucial lesson, because it can be so easy for us to get caught up in our imperfections, where we think that if we didn't have any, life would be better. But the reality is that we all have flaws, and our value is not in being perfect, but in accepting ourselves completely. We have our strengths just as much as we have our weaknesses, and we must look at ourselves thoroughly. And more often than not, our strengths outweigh our weaknesses. Hideyoshi knew this and lived by it, and he came to this conclusion with the time he spent thinking. As a teenager, Hideyoshi would go out for hours and not help with any of the chores, and this annoyed his parents. When his stepfather accosted him, thinking he was spending his time lollygagging, Hideyoshi responded with an ancient saying, "No true man ever allows the time to pass idly away." What Hideyoshi was trying to tell his family was that he was spending time reflecting. He was strategizing on how he would accomplish his ambitious goals. Although it seemed foolish to his family, Hideyoshi proved them wrong after becoming a valuable asset to a warlord. It would help if you spent more time reflecting on your goals and life. Set aside time, either daily or weekly, to look at your progress. You will get an idea of whether what you are doing is beneficial or not. A lot of mistakes are made because we don't reflect. We don't notice our patterns, and trust me, we all have patterns in our behaviors. As a result, we repeat mistakes and think we suck when that's not true. We just have to take some time to reflect, and then act on your discoveries, and you'll surprise yourself with what you can do. But reflecting on yourself isn't enough. You have to understand human nature. I wrote an article on this about a couple of months ago, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. But Hideyoshi's intuitive understanding of human nature allowed him to foresee challenges and find ways to find long-lasting success. By understanding people, he would get an accurate read on individuals and adjust accordingly. He did this with his overbearing warlord, enemies, and even his allies. One thing Hideyoshi understood that many people don't is that we can only achieve our goals in life with other people. So we have to understand the people we deal with. And like I said in my Human Nature article, since we live and work with human beings, we need to understand human nature to achieve our goals. Otherwise, we'll bang our heads on the wall wondering why people keep getting in our way. Some people will get in the way of this video and claim that Hideyoshi was a genius who could create crazy success. And yes, there is a strong argument for that. Hideyoshi was no regular samurai. He was intelligent, and a lot of things came to him intuitively. But one thing I need to stress is that Hideyoshi knew his strengths and acted on them. How many of us know our own strengths and act on them? If we're being very honest, it's not many, because we're so baked in our weaknesses and thinking that we need to be perfect. And if I'm being brutally honest, if we spent more time taking action on our goals, we would be a lot further ahead than we anticipated. And if this were the case, people would think we're geniuses. You have to remember this. You are your most incredible resource. And when you apply yourself, you will discover that you can accomplish so much more. Hideyoshi was born into poverty and he was ugly. Yet, he applied himself constantly and he seizes opportunities. The same can happen to us, not in conquering a nation, but in our lives when we're facing challenges. Hideyoshi was human. He had his strengths and weaknesses, but he knew how to take action and work with what he had. And speaking of working with what he had, let me tell you a story that sums up Hideyoshi. One day, Hideyoshi was sent on a mission with a colleague by his warlord, and due to a personal grudge against this specific colleague, Hideyoshi did not complete the mission. As punishment, his warlord locked him up in a castle where he could not have contact with most of the outside world. And this did not faze Hideyoshi at all. In fact, he took the time to get drunk, hunt, and have a good time. This was shocking to his servants, wife, and friends. They thought he had gone mad, and they asked him to go back to his usual self. But he ignored them and continued on his merry way. People were getting worried about him, and when reports came out to his fellow samurai, many were in disbelief, thinking Hideyoshi had gone crazy. However, one person figured out what he was doing. This wise man explained that Hideyoshi knew his warlord had a short temper, and if there was any reports of Hideyoshi being angry, this could stir up potential strife within the army, one siding with Hideyoshi and the other with his warlord. So to avoid the situation, Hideyoshi made it seem like everything was fine. By knowing his value, understanding human nature, and reflecting, Hideyoshi avoided a vast problem that few could have foreseen. Now, by this part of the video, you might feel ready to live the life of a samurai, but I do want to forewarn you. Sometimes when we read about famous and bold people, we want to emulate them, but this is a rookie mistake, because we're all unique in our own ways and we must respect and cultivate that. Even the Japanese during Hideyoshi's time knew this. Of course they saw many great men in their time, yet they were all different. And there's a poem showing the uniqueness of 3 of the greatest samurais during Hideyoshi's time, where each line represents one of the 3 men. I'll kill the cuckoo if it won't sing. I'll try to make the cuckoo sing. I'll wait till the cuckoo does sing. The poem briefly summarizes the meaning as following. Nobunaga used his headstrong ways to find success. Hideyoshi believed he could accomplish any goal through sheer will. Ieyasu used diplomacy to achieve his goals. All 3 of these men left their mark on Japan, yet they were all different in their approaches, and this has to do with following their strengths. And the same applies to you. You can accomplish a lot, but you must trust yourself and your gifts. The sooner you apply yourself, the sooner you will realize your strengths and what you're capable of in life. And one thing I'm capable of is wrapping up this video. We can learn 3 things from Hideyoshi. Not letting imperfections be an obstacle, spending time thinking, and understanding human nature. When you know your true value, you will not let your flaws hold you back from chasing your goals. You need to set aside time to reflect to see your progress and discover solutions to your challenges. Understanding human nature is crucial in working with people to achieve your goals. Some will argue Hideyoshi was a genius. Even though this may be true, Hideyoshi knew his strengths and applied himself, something we can all do. A possible mistake is to try and emulate Hideyoshi. This is a poor strategy since we're all unique. We have to know our own strengths and cultivate them. You are now officially a historian of Hideyoshi. Jokes aside, I highly recommend reading his biography. It has a lot of stories and you can actually read this book for free on the Internet Archives. You will be surprised by what you can learn from this man's life. However, it won't be as surprising as when I won a FIFA match with 10 men. Alright guys, that's it for today. Thank you again for watching. Please don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my newsletter, and guys remember, you're not just any type of nerd, you're a charismatic nerd.